All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to share the screen and let Irene take over.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to work with you this week. A pleasure to get the whole ball rolling on our Summer Curriculum Institute for ELAL grades 4 to 6. We both, Tricia and I, want this to be practical with takeaways for you to kind of give you a bit of a taste of how we can look at the new program of studies and incorporate what we do already, add some pieces that maybe we haven't seen before in our grade, and move from there. So with that, I would like to express our land acknowledgement for today. Today, we acknowledge the lands we share with the Indigenous people, including the Métis, the Inuit, and all other ancestors who have made these lands their home. As we gather within these territories, we are thankful for all that sustain us and provide for us at this time of year. We are thankful for new beginnings, new life, and new opportunity provided. In the essence of reconciliation, we acknowledge these territorial lands of Treaties 6, 7, and 8. And so with that, I am going to talk about, we're going to talk about routines and assessment and mini lessons with regard to the new program of studies. So I'll be intertwining connections throughout for this. I've got some documents that I'll share with you that I would like you to have a look at. We'll have some time. And please, if you have any questions, thoughts, I'd love it if you just piped in. If not, then by all means use the chat. But I welcome any kinds of comments, questions, things that you've done already perhaps, or that you are going to continue doing that would add to any of the ideas that we have here. So the first thing we're going to do is our opener, and I always recommend having an opener in class. This is part of routine. An opener asks students to share, to think about what they already know in their own lives, to practice personal connection making, and it's a good practice for that. So I think where I'm getting my questions of the day that I really like is that link that address there, journalbuddies.com. It's free to register, and I really like it. You'll get emails from Journal Buddies Jill, and she's very good at creating very thinking types of openers. These can be used as quick writes, question of the day, small group talks, whatever you'd like to, you can manipulate them whatever way. She even has grade levels of prompts. So she's got grade 4 and 5 and 6 prompts, and they can be used for absolutely anything. I really like her prompts for that question of the day. Some of the things she asks are things like, are you mountains or ocean? And why? So another very important habit of mind that we need to create in our work is to say, what makes you think so? Or how do you know that? Or where's your evidence? And that's a very important addition to all the questions that we ask our students in a day, because it pushes them beyond, here's my answer, I'm done now. So I'd like us to get involved with this. Think about where you're from. What's your favorite thing about your hometown? So I'll give you a few minutes to think of that. And you can put it in the chat. You can vocalize it.
I stopped sharing for a minute just to give everybody a chance to think.
Yes.
But while I was looking at this, Irene, it reminded me of this book, Mama, Where Are You From? That, I don't know if you know this, it's a short story, but it's a book that I've used from grade 3 to grade 9. And it has some really nice description in it too. It has lots of uses anyway, but that prompt reminded me of that story that I would use that together.
The other piece that I noticed as I worked through the curriculum is that under the skills and processes, you can pull pieces out of there to use as openers as well, as parts of routine mini lessons, that kind of thing. I know that yesterday Tricia and I had a conversation about that this could be a good segue into setting and that kind of thing. But I think that it's really important to think about, do I have a question of the day, which is what I call it. And so again, I'm seeing lots of people in the chat creating things. Someone wants you to show the cover again. Tricia.
Sure. I'll put the title in the chat too, but it's called Mama, Where Are You From?
It's got a variety of people.
Yeah.
Different places. It's very interesting. Would anyone like to vocalize? And I am from the Netherlands, and so that's what I see in the chat. And what's one thing about being from there that is important to you or distinctive?
Interesting to see.
I did this when I demo teach. I did this with a group of grade 1 students, and I asked them if a hot dog was a sandwich. And we had a wonderful conversation about that. We didn't come up with a definitive answer, but the kids would say, it's a sandwich. And I would say, well, what makes you think that? And you can see their eyes going up and going, oh, and that's good. We want to push them like that. It's a hot dog is not a sandwich. What makes you think so? So these are legitimate pieces that we want to do with our students so that they can get used to the whole oral language, that we get to talk and we get to talk to each other, and we do have personal connections, and we must answer the question, what makes you think so? And so, as I said, journalbuddies.com is a really good place because she has so much that you can be overwhelmed, can you not, about everything that's out there. And if I find 2 or 3 good places, I like to stick with those. So, boy, we've got some very interesting histories. I am from Okotoks. I love the small town feel, the mountain views, and Costco. Yay. That's great. Okay, well, we'll move on then, unless anyone else. Oh, good. Lots of neat things. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your contributions. It's they're nice to see, and we are so different already. And you can have your kids do this and teach them how to listen to each other. And even, I'm not going to speak much about oral language here, but when we conduct an accountable talk, we want to be like the director of an orchestra, and we point and we do, and we let the kids get involved in those things. They respond, they learn how to listen. At any rate, there are 9 organizing ideas in the new program of studies, and I pulled out text forms and structures. I can't remember them all off by heart, but they are text forms and structures. There's comprehension, there's writing, there's vocabulary, there's phonics and reading and those kinds of pieces. So the organizing idea is basically, here is what you will find in here. In this case, text forms and structures. Identifying and applying text forms and structures improves understanding of content, literary style, and our rich language traditions. So that's something that I think is a fair statement about text forms and structures. And now we get into the learning outcomes for each of these. So I tried to do grade 4, 5, and 6 just to kind of show you There are some connections, some similarities. Outcome 4, learning outcome for grade 4, students examine how the form and structure of text can support the communication of ideas and information. Through knowledge, understanding is that deeper, wider kind of application of this work. But the learner outcomes are what you assess and look at. But you can assess them through the kinds of assessments that you provide for your students as you work through the specifics of the program of studies. So when we look at the knowledge outcomes, we find a knowledge outcome for grade 4 that speaks to fiction or nonfiction can follow a structure. We see that in grade 5, it's almost the same thing. We have something like resolution of a problem, multiple events with many details. So we see how that sort of moves up in accountability. And in grade 6, we see that elements of fiction include conflict that prevents the protagonist from achieving a goal. So we still want grade 4, 5, 6 to know the elements and structure of fiction, but we add a couple of pieces in each grade after grade 4 that bump the accountability up in terms of that. Is anyone, I don't know that we're unfamiliar as in terms of this kind of description of the learner of these knowledge pieces in our grades that we teach. And I'm trying to sort of bridge this newness with what we already know about language arts teaching. And so this is what I pulled out of the knowledge outcomes. They're taught, the knowledge outcomes then are what students need to know. This is what students need to know. This is the skills and procedures are what students need to do. And then the understanding is that overall application, that when I leave this unit of study, I'm going to, I'm going to know this about, in a global way, about fiction. So we look at the knowledge components, and this is what students need to know. So how are we going to assess them to that big learner outcome that says students examine how the form and structures of texts can support the communication of ideas? That is through reading, reader response, and it is through writing that we ask our students to do that. As we move on, what I chose to show you as a mini lesson is the notion of summarizing fiction. It's critical that we teach our students to summarize. And summarizing can be done in a really a raft of different ways. In kid language, it's telling the most important parts of a text in your own words in a much shorter way. And summarizing is a very important after reading component to do in the reading process. Tell me what this was about. Summarizing helps students work their way through the important elements of narrative structure. And so two things that I want to point out here are things that I certainly was guilty of in my day. Delete trivial and redundant material. Do we have enough practice with that? So I'll talk to you about routines later, but when I look at delete trivial and redundant material, I see mini lessons, real small mini lessons, like the routine component. Today we're going to practice deleting trivial and redundant material. And that's going to be our practice this week. So when we start our language arts class, we're going to look at that. I find that to be something that is a difficult piece. And I think you've had the same experiences, and not all the same, but anyway, the good ones that I've seen with kids, and they struggle with that component. The other one is that a summary is when you create a new text that stands for the original text in a much shorter way. So when you ask someone to summarize the story and they just write out everything that happened, literally, that is not a summary. That is not a valid answer, if you will. That's not a good reader response. We want to look at some of these as the criteria that we want to look for when we teach our students. And this is ongoing. This is, you know, all year long. We want students to do all these pieces, but I delete trivial and redundant stuck out, and a new text that stands for the original text. Any thoughts or comments about this is what students are required to do when they summarize or when they learn how to summarize?
It is one of the skills that's mentioned in the comprehension section of the new curriculum. So it is a comprehension strategy.
Yeah.
And grade 4s are really just learning how to do it well, and keep working with it through grade 5 and grade 6.
Yeah. And even when I taught junior high, it was the same thing. You have to learn how to do those pieces in order to, and in your own words is another important component. So this is something I would share with my students, or at least certainly have notes to self about. Summarizing requires students to learn these things. And that's the key piece about this. But as you see, when you go through this and have students learn how to summarize, they're learning to go through the elements of fiction to pull out these important pieces or not. And as they do this, they are learning about text structure.
I'm going to go ahead. Okay.
Yes, thank you. So the structure includes, as we know, there's an introduction, there are characters, there's a setting, there's a conflict and a plot. And when I've used the Empowering Writers resources, I've worked with those, and they always say that narrative is character, problem, solution. They simplify it to that, character, problem, solution. That could be a planning piece ahead of what students are going to write. Who's got the character, what's the problem, what's the solution? This is something that could be done after the fact in terms of summarizing what was read or what you've written about. So we know that these are the pieces, and that's, as I showed you before in the program of studies, they're already in there, grade 4, 5, and 6. So we know that that's common. Yes?
In the new curriculum, grade 4 is the first year that they talk about having a problem in your story. I think that we've always been doing that, because in grade 3, we definitely have been putting problem into the story, but it isn't mentioned until the grade 4 curriculum now. Yeah.
And I don't think it hurts to talk about characters in grade 1 and so on.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so I'm ready to, okay, so this is the piece that I wanted to share with you, and you may or may not be familiar with this. Somebody wanted but so is a very good way to help students summarize what they know, what they read about in the book, or what they're planning to write about. So this could be almost a pre-plan as well. Somebody is, who is the main character? Wanted, what does the character want, or what is the character's goal? But is what is the problem in the story, or what is keeping the character from their goal? And so is, what is the solution to the problem, or how does the character reach his or her goal? Some people add then, somebody wanted but so then, but in my mind, I think that then and so can be incorporated into the conclusion of how the problem was solved. So this is something that I would show my students, and I've given you a template of this one. I would show my students, I would have them go through it. The template is on the next page, but
it was sent to them in an email as well.
Yeah, so you do have that. It's not this one. The one that I sent is a little simpler, but it really helps our students to not be so wordy, that they have to be specific in what they are saying about somebody wanted but so. And that's a really important component too. They learn how to be precise with their word choices. And that's a very important component. You can see the then, you know, how did they solve the problem? What was the resolution to the story? So I think that's absolute choice that that we have here. What are your thoughts about this somebody wanted but so? Any questions, any ideas, any ways that you've had experiences with this in your classroom?
I think it's
And
really
again,
valuable in getting to the heart of it. Like,
yes, and that wordiness is what gets me is yeah, and it's the wordy parts, like you've got to learn to be specific.
right. I think it
So,
could be used as a pre-writing too
oh
for
sure. What
pre-writing.
are you going to write about
Yeah.
in your story? Who's somebody? What did they want? But what happened so then? Yes, and Sandra's saying it works well for ELL students. Absolutely. So with this component, I've given you a document that you can use. And I think, are teachers able to access it now, Tricia? Or
Yeah, they
maybe I
can.
can stop.
Do you want me to show what
I'll
you
give
said?
I'll give you time to look through these in a minute, I think.
Okay.
Would that be fair? Okay.
I'll
So
move on.
okay, so it's really important that a teaching sequence should follow the following, and I've got that written down further on in my slides, but a teaching sequence should be you explaining and modeling the skill that's needed. And by this, I mean, you model it. When you do a clean model, you're modeling everything from start to finish. You do not involve your students. You will say to your students, watch and listen, or I'm about to model this for you, but you want to do a full model. And sometimes I'm reminded of math when I look and I see someone, you know, solving the problem on the board and saying, and what numbers should go here? And then he asks the students, and that's not modeling. That's not full modeling. That has to, it's you from start to finish. This is what I'm doing. This is what I think. This is why I put a 5 there. And this is why I got this answer. And this is what we do when we model in language arts. So that teaching sequence is about explain and model. And then it's very critical to have guided practice. You must build in to your time guided practice. So less is more. This is where we focus our time. And this is where students practice, and you will be their coach as you watch them practice and help. Obviously, you could use any kind of situation or little story that you want for this, but practice is good, and that could be a routine every morning from Monday to Friday. Could be that practice of summarizing just those little pieces, or practice using and understanding somebody wanted but so. And then the third component of the teaching sequence then is application, where we engage our students in writing reader response to something and marking it. We engage our students in reader response, or we engage them in planning their story, and that could be included with their work. So the sequence that is very important is explain, model, guided practice, application. And guided practice is about things that aren't connected to the application part. I have taught you and shown you how to summarize, and now I want you to summarize this story after you've read it, and you haven't seen it yet, and I'm going to watch you at whatever way I mark you, formatively or summatively. That's where I want to see what you have learned from me. I want you to show me how you know how to summarize. So those are important components about that teaching sequence that needs to be in there. Any thoughts about anything here? I'm just checking the. Okay, perfect. So this is the whole component, and that's why I bring up practice. On the next slide, you're going to see a way to do this practice, and And it's to start with short text, a paragraph, a magazine, a news article, short text is for when you model, and then you can build into longer text as you move through the year, you know, short stories, etc. But I believe in chunking out the learning, not doing the whole thing all at once. And so when you model, yeah, start with something they've read already and show them how that could be summarized using somebody wanted but so. When you start off, of course, you're going to break anything into manageable chunks. You know, so it's a really important component is to learn chunk by chunk. And that's what I really advocate when it comes to editing and revising. When you're trying to teach your kids to do that. When we teach our students to edit and revise in writing, we pick an edit outcome and a revise outcome. And that's what we work with on that piece of writing. And we stop after chunks have been written and we say, do the edit and the revise outcome that we're learning about on this chunk. And then they move on. And now they'll write another chunk of writing, stop them. Say, now do edit and revise, the one of each that we pulled out of the program of studies, and do that kind of work again on that middle chunk. And the last piece, I would have kids do edit and revise again. So at this point, they've seen and worked with the edit outcome and the revise outcome in their work 3 times. And at this point, we hope, you know, in a perfect world that, you know, they can, students will proofread or whatever they need to do, but less is more. And that's where I say you've got to have your edit and revise. They're 2 separate items and we pick one of each. And that's what we really work on in that piece of writing. And then we'll see when we do assessment how these 1-point rubrics really give us that authentic assessment. So that was a side trip over there and I'm back now. But I really wanted to advocate for the edit, revise and chunking it out like that and letting students do that kind of work. It's probably overwhelming and frustrating to say, okay, now look at your whole piece and check for spelling, grammar usage, capitalization, and punctuation, which are far too generic to expect a grade 4, 5, 6 student to do in that way. If you want me to look at spelling, what's the rule you're teaching me? That's what I'll do in my writing. If you want me to look at end punctuation, that's what I'll have you edit as you work through. So if you're familiar with traits, revise is that bigger component. It's about ideas, organization, voice, sentence structure, and word choice. Edit is only about grammar, spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. And so we want students to be able to tell us that. And that's another piece around this. And again, manageable chunks is not just for students, but it's for you as well. Zero in.
When we get to look at the curriculum too, that convention part that you're talking about,
yeah,
very specific about what each grade needs to focus on as well. But I think we'll get to that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Kristen has a question. I'm prejudiced, so I would suggest I even like Vicki Spandel's 6 traits of writing. She doesn't include +1, which is about presentation, and that is Ruth Cullum, but either one works for me. There's traits is old, but old is not bad. Old is still good in many ways. And so I really like trait teaching. I like the methodology behind it. Less is more. Vicki Spandel is VICKISPANDEL. And you know, you're right. There's no one way to go. There's no such thing as one way to do things. But I like parts of the pieces in traits that talk about focus on fewer outcomes than more. focus on a specific writing skill at a time, build, and really, you know, take your time. Stop trying to teach everything, if I may be so rude.
I would also say no matter what program, if you choose to use a program, that you just need to make sure that it's matching up with those, with the cusps in the curriculum. But if you like the format and the way that a program is set up, then it would work for you and your class.
Yeah. And it's always about curriculum first, always. It's got to it's got to be that first. That's what needs to drive you. And so I just I'm wanting to have a look at assessment at this point. Are there any thoughts around what we've just talked about? There's some good talk about trait teaching. And again, you know, I really like empowering writers, but I don't think it's the only way to go. If you stick with empowering writers, that's okay. But what about the other pieces that are out there in our program of studies that we do? There's a question here: is there a resource for creating good rubrics, or where to find good rubrics?
Actually, on day 3, I'm going to talk about rubrics and how I built some. Yeah. So I will show you.
Yeah.
But did you have something in mind, Irene?
Well, I know that the AAC has some rubrics, and if you go to the Alberta Assessment Consortium, and if you check with your school district, you should be a member, and you'll need a username and a password, and that will get you in. And then you can order all sorts of like really good working booklet type resources to help you understand how to make a rubric and how to be consistent with that. aac.ab.ca. So when it comes to assessment,
did I go ahead? I'm sorry.
Oh,
there you go. Okay.
A good rubric, properly made, facilitates clear and meaningful communication to the students. And not everything in the whole world is rubricable. I don't think that's a word, but anyway, I hope you get what I mean. You don't have to rubricate everything that goes on. However, if you are using something as a piece for a report card, Mark, perhaps that's a rubric piece. Performance assessment tasks require rubrics, I would think. You can look at those cherry items that you have in class that you have kids do. They might need a rubric. You can have a final exam and mark it as such, or an exam. And some things, of course, there's all sorts of formative assessment that can be done. When I think about creating rubrics with students, I feel like I do not want to find out what my grade 9s think should be in a good essay. However, I want to create a rubric that says, what are the most critical items? What are the most critical skills I want my students to show me that they know? And that's why I always suggest grade 4 to 9, probably higher, but grade 4 to 9 should have 3 to 5 outcomes on the 3 to 5 criteria on a rubric. Anything more is too much. Then you start to throw things in that aren't as critical as the first 3 things you put in there. So what are the 3 to 5 most critical skills I want my students to show me that they know? And that's how you begin to create a rubric. And the criteria comes from the program of studies. And I'll show you that in a minute. But certainly you can look at the criteria that you've created or that you've pulled and said, here's what I'd like to mark you on. And one, you can say, what does this mean in kid language here? How can we rewrite these criteria to say, to put it in our kind of language that we understand what you're looking for. And as Tricia said, you can also discuss, what does excellent look like? Proficient, adequate, limited. What do those things look like? So if I said student understands structure of narrative text in my rubric, I would take that and talk to my students about it and say, so what does that really mean? Oh, we know what a story, how a story is built. Yeah, that's a way of putting it. You know, so we take kids through that. That's how I deal with that kind of working with your students on those things, because I do have a program of studies that I'm beholden to. And, you know, I could certainly have that reflective conversation afterwards about, you know, what did we miss in the essay? What parts were we not good at? What parts could we have improved on? What parts were great? So I'd rather do that kind of reflective work with students. They have a hard time, the worst time, talking about the pluses and minuses of their own work. And I've still heard it out there in my travels that, you know, I let students tell me what mark they get, and then we talk about it. And I think, but they're not teachers. They don't know how to do that. I would rather teach my students using the language of assessment. I would rather have my students talk to me about the quality of their work and what were wows and what were think abouts. And that's how I would aim, is my students to really be able to talk about their work and say, well, I know I'm a bad speller, but I know where to go to make sure things are right. I have trouble getting started. You know, those are all sorts of neat pieces. And, you know, you can have kids self-assess that way. I know a teacher who, at the end of all of her big assignments, she had her students respond with a sentence starter. So I am most proud of, and that's what the kids would write about, using the criteria from the rubric, not just I am most proud that I got this done, which means nothing. But if you've got them saying, I am most proud of the way I made sure my sentence beginnings were different from each other, that's how we want our students to do that. Again, the examples of writing pieces that are already done. You can look at the AAC website. Alberta Ed has examples. And if your district is doing HLATs, there are examples there too. And that's just a district piece. If you're not doing them, that's okay. You don't have to. So I'd still like to go back for a minute. Thank you. Clear and meaningful communication. It helps to keep us as teachers accountable and consistent in our grading. And this leads to authentic assessment. I assess what I teach. I am not adding things to this rubric because, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to put spelling in there too. Did you refer to any spelling rule in that unit? No, then you shouldn't be putting it in there. So it keeps our assessment authentic and consistent. And we can bring our students in by showing them how to talk about the quality of their work. It keeps us focused, because I've done many assignments where I've marked and I get so carried away with your spelling that I have forgotten the gist of what it was I was looking for in the first place. So again, it's important to think that you assess what you teach. A single point rubric, which Tricia will work on more with you, it includes guidance on the work without listing a grade. So it might say, this is what you need to work on. This is what was amazing. This is wow. This is think about. And the criterion is in the middle. And that's the part that I would provide the feedback on. What I have done in the past is I've had a sheet with all the important assignments listed. And I've done a wow and a think about as feedback for each of those pieces of writing. And students keep it because I use it for the next piece of writing while think about, and they work on the feedback I give them as they work toward completing something that's they've had a chance to make better. And wouldn't it be an amazing thing if you did that with your students, and starting your next writing unit, you pulled out all the comments that were made for their last few assignments and have students review the wows and the think abouts to carry with them into the new unit or the new kind of writing that you're going to do, or new kind of reader response. That would be such a neat way to involve our students really into the work, and look at their own feedback and work with it and value it. Let's use that to move forward. Just a thought. A single point rubric is very good because it moves the attention off of grades and it looks at quality, and less is more. We have to make our work manageable for our students and ourselves. So good assessment gurus out there will tell you that you need to submit 3 to 7 or 8 pieces of evidence for a report card. What is it? You pick something that's as current as it can be. You pick those assignments that show more than one skill, and you earmark them ahead of time and say, these are the 4 things that I'm going to submit for the report card. And that's what I'll be working with. And, you know, it gets rid of, hello, me, all guilty as charged. Grade 9s were working on an advertising unit, and they came again on a Friday. They came in, okay, we're worried, let's go. And I said, we're not doing that today. We're doing a business letter. Literally, physically, it was like I stopped them in their tracks. What are we doing? Why? And I said, because I need marks for the report card. And lightning didn't hit me, but boy, I'm embarrassed. What a horrible thing to do and say. If we can earmark 3 to 7 or 8 per term, you decide, then we have a legitimate, comprehensive look at what your child has done up to now and how much of what your child knows so far. So rubrics are really important, but it's not the only game in town either. And with that, I would move us to what I've chosen as an assessment for this summarizing. And I would have students read any kind of short piece of text, and they would fill out the narrative pyramid. The narrative pyramid, you write it out like this, and the first part of the first line says 1, and it says who's a character. 1 means you have 1 word to say who the character is. The second line is 2 words that describe the character. Third line is 3 words that describe the setting. I shared this with you. You've got 4 words that describe a problem. So event, solution. So what you have is a breakdown of the parts of the narrative. And if someone says in the setting, like, girls hated boys, that has nothing to do with setting. So it's a good way to assess comprehension, or do you know the parts of the narrative pyramid? So they've got 5 words for event, 6 for event, 7 for another, and 8 for a solution. And if there's only 2 events, that's fine. So this is and I really like the narrative pyramid. I love using it. It's just challenging enough to have kids think about it. Again, trying to get rid of that wordiness that's always there not always, but that's there many times when we ask our kids to summarize, which is not tell the whole thing over again exactly as what you read. So narrative pyramid works very, very well in my opinion. And before I give you some time, I want to move to the next component of assessment. So I looked at grade 4. I made grade 4, 5, and 6 rubrics that I shared with you, but I looked in grade 4 and I pulled out criteria for what do I really want my students to show me that they know? I want the student to understand that narrative follows a structure. And I want the student to understand that summarizing information involves key ideas, specific details, and logical organization. That's what I want to mark. And my rubric is different. It's not exactly 1 point, which is a feedback component, but it's still something that's doable. Student understands that narrative follows a structure. How well is that? Is it excellent, proficient, adequate, or limited? The student understands what summarizing information involves, key ideas and specific details, excellent, proficient, adequate, and limited. So I would ask you to go to where Tricia sent you. I've got narrative pyramid, somebody wanted, but so have a look at those grade 4, 5, 6 rubrics. And I only put 2 criteria in there because you don't need a whole mess of text after text. Well, how do you get students to understand that 3 on a rubric is good? Excellent for you to mark is like, wow, you took a risk and it worked. And proficient, to be honest, is a damn good piece of writing. And adequate is that run-of-the-mill, blah, 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 listy. And limited, it's an argument that says it's fail, but in my opinion, I think you can still be at grade level and be limited. You are barely hanging on. If I could give you a mark for that, it would be a 50, that's it. But we sure want to show samples of excellent and proficient and put them side by side and notice the more subtle differences. This is what moved it to excellent. Here's a proficient one. Don't you think it's good? What could we do to make it excellent? So talking about student samples in a really detailed way with specific criteria would really be bonus. And that's a good question. Like, if it's not excellent, well, then it's horrible and I'm not doing that. And we just can't, we have to talk about that. Then consistently wanting 100% on the assignment. Yeah. We want to move them away from marks with being able to talk about the quality of their work. It's quality of work that we want to focus on the most. And marks are to send out to your parents. It's going to be it is and is going to continue to be a really hard hill to climb because yeah, and a 5-point scale, it's hard to create sometimes. I'm prejudiced. I like 4-point because it really forces me to make a decision. You're either excellent, proficient, adequate, or limited. If I'm in a bad mood, I might put you at a 3. I mean, we are human. And if I read one more story about a lost dog, I'm going to go nuts. So that's a 3. Joking, of course, but I just like even numbered rubrics because they force your decision a bit more. And we do, I don't see anything wrong with forcing your decision, forcing a decision on yourself and saying, okay, make up your mind and decide what this is. I'd like to give you about 3 minutes to go and look at the handouts that I shared with you, 4, 5, 6 rubric. Somebody wanted, but so a narrative pyramid. Is that possible, Tricia?
Yep, we can give them
Thank you.
3 minutes, and then I'll show a little bit on the curriculum website. Gives you a little break. I emailed the grade 4 rubric, grade 5 rubric, grade 6 rubric, and the somebody wanted but so, and
The pyramid.
the pyramid. yes, to everyone last night or yesterday afternoon.
While you're looking, I also want to say that it's important to describe excellent, proficient, adequate, and limited. For instance, an excellent piece might be insightful, proficient could be thoughtful, adequate could be reasonable, and limited could be minimal. And I believe that you can find rubric wordsmithers all over the place. AAC has them. You can use stuff from the Alberta Ed site, and you can certainly look up rubrics for the descriptors of excellent, proficient, adequate, limited, or whatever titles you're using.
Okay. Michael, were you not on the list? I don't know. If you didn't receive the email, can you put your address in the chat box? I'll make sure that you get them. Okay.
Any questions or thoughts about that material?
Okay. I might have to do this after the session, but you will get that email. Have and Val. And then I can move on to talking about the curriculum a little bit.
Feels like it.
Okay. I just have to copy Fatima's email. Okay. I'll get back to that. So I'll take you to the curriculum and I'll share my screen. I'll just show you a few things related to what Irene's been showing you. So have a look. I'm logged in to the language arts or to the curriculum in general right now. If you are not logged in, you won't have your name up on the top right-hand corner. If you are logged in, it's there, and you will be able to see many more resources than if you're not logged in. So there are a few things that Irene mentioned that I just wanted to show again. So she did talk about there being 9 organizing ideas. You do not need to teach and assess all 9 organizing ideas. In grade 4, you just have 7 organizing ideas that you're responsible for. You don't have phonological awareness or phonics. And in 5 and 6, you also don't have to report on fluency, although I'm sure that you will still do some activities that involve fluency. So here are a couple of things that I wanted to make sure that you see that are related to what Irene was showing you. I'm just going to look at the grade 4 curriculum to start, for example. So the learning outcome that she started with, it was the text forms and structure learning outcome. But I'd also like you to see underneath then where she got that part from the cusps, the knowledge, understanding, and skills and procedures that go together. So this is what informs when you report on this learning outcome. If that, hopefully that makes sense for you. But also in a single activity, that, like the one that you started with, you could fulfill text forms and structure outcome, also oral language. You could fulfill a vocabulary outcome, a comprehension outcome, a writing outcome. You could cover many different things by only using one activity.
Mhm.
But I wanted to show you, not everybody is using this magnifying glass icon. So if you click on that, you can put a word into that search that brings up lots of other resources and cross-curricular opportunities. So for example, if we put in the word summarize in the search, and even with no filters, so I'll just leave it as far as grade, subject, and what to include. We just search summarize. We can take a look at where that comes up in the curriculum document. So we find that there is one resource that's related to summarizing. It's a summarizing organizer. So you might want to have a look at that. If you are logged in and it says view resource and it's green, that means you can go straight to it. If it stays blue, then it's something that you might have to purchase or that you don't have access to because you aren't logged in. But if we look at this particular one, it's a summarizing organizer. It's suggested for grade 5, and it's listed as one of the resources included in the curriculum. So it is there and available for you to use with your students. It has the Alberta Ed logo on it because they've created it. But you can definitely use the strategies that Irene has showed you with this template. So if we go back to our search, what else is there for summarize? Oh, darn, I think I lost it. I'll do it again. For summarize, because I wanted you to see where there's cross-curricular opportunities as well. There's 17 results, as we saw before. In English language arts, it starts in grade 2, we see the summarizing. The principle that I just showed you, but this is what I also wanted you to see, is that also in grade 5, they're needing to take notes and do summarizing in social studies. So summarizing is a skill that is definitely cross-curricular. It comes up in comprehension in grade 6, in comprehension in grade 5. And there's also a few more resources that can help you, a sample lesson plan for summarizing. Oh, this is maybe I'll actually show you this one. This resource, struggle for water or struggle for survival water. It's a resource that Pearson has put up. There are several of these stories that can be read online. You can have it read to you or you can read it. But there are a lot of books like this that are in the resource section that you might not find unless you did that search. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of all the places that you could find resources. It skips over that every time. I wanted to show you the search. Anyway, do you have any questions about doing the search? About doing the search or exploring on the curriculum website while I'm in here? I'll open up the English language arts. Also, I don't know if people have noticed that if you teach multiple grades, you can zoom in and zoom out, and then you're able to see one grade at a time or see up to 3 grades at a time. So there I can look at my 4 5s. So even if I'm not teaching multiple grades, I can look at what they did in the same learning outcome, but in the previous year. All right, that was just a little look at the curriculum to show you how it connects to what we're talking about too. All right, well, Irene, I think we can go back to you for a while. You
Okay,
can.
I want to move into the routine component of the kinds of things that we do that we should be doing, I guess, and using the new curriculum for that. Routine creates opportunities for all learners. It's used to provide practice in the foundational elements of reading and writing. So it gives students agency. They use what they already know to apply it to a new situation. And again, I just wanted to remind you about that teaching routine, which is you explaining and modeling, guided practice, application. Routines are really critical in the classroom, in the language arts classroom, because they give you time to help your students practice certain things on a regular basis that you might not have time to go full bore. You can create routines with things students have already done and do that in a way. So I talked to you about the question of the day and how you can use the question of the day for practicing personal connections, oral language, having students talk to each other, and having them explain and give evidence as to what they're thinking. So the next slide shows routines that I would really personally suggest in language arts. Word work is something that we want our students to work on every day. And when I say word work, I mean spelling rules, grammar usage, prefix, suffix, content area words. Spend X amount, few minutes a day on our word, the word, meanings of words, using the word wall if you have, and some kind of word work. There's certainly enough in the language to have something to do every day for the whole 10 months. I don't have a word work routine as such. What I have done is to say to students, these are the 5 words that we're going to be studying in our novel, or that they're going to appear in our novel. So I want to go through each of them one a day this week to explain what they mean, to show you how they can be used in a sentence, to draw a visual, etc. Word work, it can also include, of course, the vocabulary. So what I do is I think, what about spelling rules at this grade level? What about grammar usage at this grade level? Prefix, suffix, homonyms, that kind of thing. What about, words their way is a way to incorporate that. And that's a good way that's good to use throughout when you're teaching your students. In the routine part, I'm talking about this week, we're going to learn where to put commas in our sentences. And every morning this week, I'm going to talk to you and we're going to work through putting commas in the right place. This could also be part of a center, if you have that students could go to work on. And I just pull from everywhere. So what are content area words, spelling rules, even how to learn how to be a good word learner. I use a Freyer model, which you've all seen, I think, and you've got the word, the definition always in the student's own words, not copied from the glossary, a sentence using the word, and then a visual to help you remember. Now, when we do vocabulary, we have to prioritize our vocabulary. Which words should students know forever? These are life words: environment, weather. Which words are right now words that students need to learn in order to comprehend the unit of study? And then which words are nice to know, which I would put in a handout. then right now words, I would have students work in pairs to create their own set of index cards that they're using all the time when they work in science or wherever. And that's a tool that shows them that you can make references to things. That's okay to do if you don't know what a word means, but I pull from everywhere. And I think too, if you are interested, like, you can email me. My email's at the end of the slide, but I can set that up in a more logical way for you, if you will. I've got some pieces like that. We always share a purpose with our students. So that's just part of it. The reason we are reading this short story is, and it doesn't have to be a Broadway musical, it's a student-friendly explanation of why are we reading this today? Why are we writing a narrative right now? And that's purpose, that students have a right to know where they're headed. I told you about what makes you think so. Talk to you about, what makes you think that? What's your evidence? How do you know? Why would you say that? Model think aloud is absolutely critical in terms of a full model. And there's very important that accountable talk happens in the classroom. And that's students who, they know how to listen. They know what listening looks like and sounds like. They know what speaking looks like and sounds like. They have created a classroom norms for having accountable talk. And accountable talk would be even things like following protocols, jigsaw, save the last word, collaborative summaries, inside outside circle. This is accountable talk. Our students need to learn how to have a focused conversation. And when they peer at it, what's the focus? Why are we together talking to each other? Tag is very good for that. T is tell something you like, A is ask a question, and G is give advice. But what are the students talking about? You have to give them that accountability that says, today you're doing tag teams based on varied sentence beginnings. That's why you're meeting. So there's that whole piece. Yeah, if you email me, I've got a couple of pieces around accountable talk, and I've got some titles too. I really recommend the use of sticky notes. We teach our students how to use sticky notes in their work when they read, when they write, when they're reading something, any opportunities. So when students read, I have them use sticky notes. I'll say, in 2 places in this reading, I want you to put the sticky right down on the words that remind you of something in your own life, and then write down what it reminds you of on the sticky. Do that twice. And at the end, we're going to have a conversation that will have us use our sticky notes. And of course, personal connections at all times is an important component. Any kind of text, anything. And the way that students become better at personal connecting is when they see you modeling it for them. So just because there's a dog on the front of the book doesn't mean I can't connect to it because I don't have a dog. There are other pieces, deeper pieces, pictures, whatever, that I can connect to as well. And that's the big hurdle for some. No, it doesn't remind me of anything, so no. And it's not about that, but if they see you constantly modeling that deeper personal connection making with why is that a connection for you, then I think you'll be good. I looked at the skills and procedures in grade 4, and I found that you can pull a lot of the skills out and use them as routine. For instance, this week we're going to practice using figurative language. We're going to learn the different genres in the world. So all week we're going to look at the difference between fiction and nonfiction. We're going to really look at point of view this week. So those I pulled out under the skills and procedures. You can't do all of them, but these would be good routines to do as well. To use, good fodder to use as part of your routine component, which is literacy connected. Okay, so that's habits of mind. And there are, of course, many other activities that lend themselves to summarizing. And a lot of you have shared resources, and it's much appreciated that you're doing that. Where did I put sentence stems? Yes, student activities. Okay, sorry, Tricia. I'll go back to the first part. Sorry. Too much rain in my head. Other summarizing activities, are narrative pyramid. We've got the plot diagram, which I think we're very familiar with. 5-finger summary is perfect. You can outline your own hand on paper, and students will put in the theme or the concept and what are 5-finger facts about that concept. Character's name, what are 5 descriptors about that character in there? And that is a summary. Boy, you have to not be, and I just assumed my students would write up and down like this, but there's always someone who's going to write it like this. So that makes it a little more difficult to do. Exit slips are very good as long as they're specifically focused on summarize what we read about today. What was the main idea in so-and-so story that we read? So as long as an exit slip is specific to a literacy skill, then those are wonderful pieces. And they're very good formative assessment because you just have a look at them quickly and see what people are thinking and knowing. You might have to reteach something tomorrow or not. And that just brings me to thinking about conferencing. When you conference with your whole class, it's a good idea to ask everybody the same question so that when you start, you'll say, today, I'm going to ask you to show me your sentence beginnings. And everyone gets that question from you. Everyone gets their own specific feedback from you about that. And you now have a lay of the land that says they're struggling or they're not. And you can give that quick 1-minute piece that says, if you notice, you've got and then in here. So that needs to be looked at. Less is more, funnel it in. Headline summaries, that's when we read headlines in the paper, that's what tells us what this article is going to be about, and it creates interest. So you could do that. 6-word summaries, or any word, any number for that matter. In 10 words, tell me what the main idea was about this. Is another way to look to do that. Again, it's that wordiness, and we want you to be precise and concise. And I think the next component is about the sentence stems. I really believe in providing sentence stems, not only for reader response, but for writing. And, I've tended to, we brainstorm, we do this and that, and then I say, all right, go and write. And people don't know where to start. So once upon a time, I could start with that, couldn't I? I think it's a really good practice to have kids and you create sentence stems for writing the paragraph. And empowering writers really shows that how, suddenly I turned and suddenly I heard this, those kinds of things. I think it's important to provide sentence stems for students. This is not about cheating or anything like that. It's showing them how. You'll get your students who will say, do I have to use those or can I use other ones? Yes, by all means, that's what I wanted from you. So these are just a few. This was about, that should say, I noticed that. I like the way the author keywords for me were. Those are just some good pieces to get people thinking. I mean, I would give them 2 or 3 and say, pick one of these and write your summary. But I really believe in that sentence stem component. I didn't do that nearly enough, or I'd share 1 or 2 and say, okay, start writing. So I think this is a really important component. Are you providing sentence stems that make them think summarize. Okay. Trisha?
All right. Thanks, Irene. So I wanted to show everyone where you can find some of these resources. We're continuing to create more and more resources. And this website is where all of the ARPDC learning facilitators have been keeping the things that we're creating. So it is and this was also in the email that I sent you last night that apparently a few of you didn't get, but it's arpdc.ab.ca/new-curriculum-resources. So when you get to the new curriculum resources page for today, we'll just look at the English language arts and literature, where we've been posting many resources. Lots of them, as you see, are for planning. Probably for your use for this group, if you go to the new curriculum implementation toolkit, this is specifically for grade 4 to 6, and it doesn't really matter where you enter. I'll open up the landscape version so that you can have a look. But we've been posting lots of resources to do with teacher foundational knowledge, planning, assessment, and then other resources that you might want to access. There's a few things that I wanted to show you. Let's see. Wanted to specifically highlight about planning, how to effectively design your literacy instruction. So it might be on this one. Sorry. Designing your literacy instruction time. So ELA daily, darn, this is not the one that I wanted to show you. I'm gonna go back, sorry. Back to ELAL, and where it says, there is a part in here about 1-point rubrics. If you're interested and you want to know how to make those better, I would strongly recommend having a look at that. The morphology piece, a lot of people haven't taught it before or have taught it only using a program. But if you want to do it without the program, you're welcome to try that. Have a look at that. In grade 5, it specifically mentions hybrid texts. So this is a piece that would help you understand how to use those. Incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing, I should highlight that tomorrow, Kim Tackaberry is going to be the host for the morning, and she's going to talk mostly about incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing. I'm gonna go back to that grade 4 to 6 toolkit because I'm quite sure that that's where I wanted to show this to you. And some of the choices. So the week ELAL daily structures and samples. Yes, how to effectively design your literacy instruction. So this slide deck will take you through planning that literacy instruction. And if you look particularly, I had 2 slides picked out. Slide 29 gives a suggestion of how to structure a 90-minute block. So, and this would be, Irene followed this quite a bit actually, to have that introduction with a morning meeting, maybe a question of the day at the beginning, then do a bit of vocabulary related to that, go into a mini lesson, or have a whole class activity. And then you would end with either writer's workshop, and then finally independent reading or read aloud. So that is one way to organize your day for a 4, 5, 6. This is another way to do the 4 to 6. Some people do quite a bit of the morphology at the beginning, then a response to reading, some vocabulary work, and then guided reading or small group instruction. In my practice, I have more followed this type of schedule. And I just wanted to let you know that right now I'm working with a colleague on a unit plan for The Barren Grounds, which is a book, a really excellent novel by David Robertson. And we've done a lot of our morphology work using words from in the novel study that we're doing. Yes, people love, like students love Barren Grounds, and if you can get them hooked on it, there's 4 more books in the, it used to be a trilogy, but now it's a series. So if we go back, I'll answer that question in a minute. But I just was thinking about how I would use this novel to go through this kind of a strategy. And using all the pieces would work really effectively. I'm looking at now, how do you incorporate it if you don't have a 90-minute period? If you don't have 90 minutes, then there's lots of things that you would do it with other curriculum connections. So you do some of it in your social studies time, for example, the vocabulary or the oral language, or maybe even your writing. You might have to do in a cross-curricular way. That's not very specific, but hopefully it gives you an idea. I'm going to go back to this, this website, just so that you know that there are lots of places for you to get ideas about planning and teaching with this new curriculum, specifically your 4, 5, and 6 work that you're doing. I also sent some year planning samples in that email. And you can find them on this website as well. I'm gonna make sure that I know where to share, where I've shared that with you. Hopefully everyone will now be on the email list too, because that'll help you out. We'll send you. Okay. I'm going to show you those sample year plans as well, because they, I'll go back to that, back to the toolkit. There's some sample year at a glance, but there's also some sample long range planning. So the year at a glance, I'll show you how they're organized. They have the curriculum laid out, and then they've looked at it as a term 1 and term 2, and how you would teach some of the things in term 1 and some of the things in term 2. Anyway, it has all the skills and knowledge and skills and procedures laid out. And some people find this is a great way to support their planning. It depends on how you like to organize your planning. You know, Irene, are there more questions that I'm missing in the chat?
Yeah, I'm working on those.
Okay, if you want to answer them out loud, that's fine too.
Just a few things. Yes, we want to incorporate all these routines and habits and things in the classroom. And I would certainly go, I like the workshop idea, reader writer workshop, which you could do every other day kind of thing. Your routines could be spread out over the 5-day week. In terms of silent reading, could be 3 times a week. There's an opportunity to do things cross-curricularly with literacy items that you could use. That with time in there, guided reading could be part of silent reading time, center work, part of workshop too. think you want to structure your time frames in such a way, but you could certainly spread it out over time. You could do silent reading, perhaps in social studies. You can manipulate those things. There isn't that opportunity in secondary because you've got that and that's what you've got. But I think that if you don't want to do them all in one day, you want to do them throughout the week or throughout the month or throughout 2 weeks. We do it like this, and then the next 2 weeks we'll start again. That kind of round table, kind of round robin thing would work as well.
Excellent. In the long range plans that I sent them, the samples, this grade 6 one shows another way of structuring your day, and that some of those pieces are done in library period, which we didn't talk about today, but that's another place where you can infuse curricular outcomes, and definitely that cross-curricular piece. Anyway, those
Is
are
that in the items you shared with people?
yes,
Tricia?
and it's
Okay.
also at the ARPDC website. It's both. Yeah.
And do you know if we're getting new minutes, more minutes, different minutes for teaching LA from the government or not yet?
As far as I know, it hasn't changed.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
what I'd like you to do is to just think and share, if you wouldn't mind, just not necessarily all of these, but what 3 ideas that you heard today, what were they? What are 2 ideas that you'd like to pursue? And what is an action that you would take immediately in September? So I'm going to give you a minute to think about this and share it in the chat room. And then we'll get to wrapping things up.
So I will make sure that the list of email addresses is updated so that when we share the resources, everyone is getting them. I'll check with that again today.
So restructuring my ELAL time into more focused blocks, good idea. Any other thoughts at this point? Spend more time working through my daily, weekly ELAL routines, more accountable talk. Yes, good ideas, folks.
Yeah.
Very good.
Oh, lots. Now they're coming fast and furious.
ELAL routines, different ways of assessing, incorporate intentional routines into my work. That's great. Openers, planning templates, more use of single point. What does listening look like? Having routines, working on 1-point rubrics to incorporate them more into assessment, add accountable talk, morning journal writing with journal buddies. I enjoyed everything very much. Thank you. My action plan, focused conversation, accountable talk, short texts.
Great.
That's wonderful. Oh, this is super. And so I would like, I'm not going to speak for Trish. Maybe she doesn't want to thank you, but no, I'm just kidding. Our emails are on the last slide.
Yeah, they are so. Yeah.
Yes. And I would like to thank you all for your interest as well. And our sticky notes, that's what I'm looking at. Our emails are there. If you can, if you're interested, you can talk to one of us, certainly email any of us. We'll be happy to support you in the work that you do. And thank you. I'll be back. Let that be a warning to you. I'll be back on Thursday doing nonfiction in a different way too. So
Great.
that's what we're going to look at. And tomorrow is Kim. Yes, Tricia?
Yes, Kim is hosting tomorrow. I am hosting on Wednesday, and Irene's back hosting on Thursday. I'm putting the link to the grade 4 sample long range plan, but you will be able to find all of it at the website and at the grade 4 toolkit. So I'll put that in the chat as well. And all of the pieces that Irene shared will, if you weren't in the previous email, you will be in today's email.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. It's exactly 12 o'clock. So see you again tomorrow.
Bye, everyone.